Welcome to Pro Football First 50 Years, where we take the past and we bring it back to life. I'm strictly talking the first 50 years here, 1920 to 1970. And especially if you're going to go back in time and check out a game maybe from the 20s or the 30s, sure, you can go online and find a box score, who won, who lost, who scored a touchdown, how far a field goal was that someone kicked. You can find the attendance, where the game was played at. You might find starting lineups for each team. But exactly what happened during the game? Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game during the first 50 years of professional football. Now, a little news flash here for you. Ain't no fancy videos or nothing like that. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. So if that's all right with you, let's get it on. And today's game. San Francisco 49ers visit Briggs Stadium / Navin Field / Tiger Stadium. There won't be a quiz on this, I promise you, at the end of the video. San Francisco 49ers at the Detroit Lions at Briggs Stadium, October 18th, 1959. Now, for two pretty much totally different reasons, this would be a very disappointing for each team. When you're the Detroit Lions and you go to the 52 championship game and you win, you go to the 53 championship game and you win, you go to the 54 championship game, you go to the 57 championship game and win, and you start the season off 0-4. Whoo, doggy. That's not good. And obviously the game was played the home of the Detroit Lions, and it got ugly there. It got very, very ugly. The fans were not very happy with the outcome of this game. Let's pull up the. We got a lot of coverage on this game here, so let me pull up here the Detroit Lions. 1959. Now you'll see. They had a very good preseason exhibition, right? But if you're playing, you like to win, and they did a pretty good job. Now they played 7 preseason games, for crying out loud. 7, 12 regular season games. So they played 19 games. 7 of them. 7 of them didn't even count. Could you imagine that nowadays in today's pro football? Oh my goodness. They had a very good exhibition season. Now this game, this is wrong right here. It says, according to Pro Football Archives, I don't know how to contact them. I don't know if they even care, but this is wrong. The Cardinals won this game 21-19, so this is wrong. However, you'll see, they had 4 wins, 2 losses, and a tie. Very, very successful. But once the regular season started, oh my, the shoe was on the other foot. Holy cow. You'll see right here, they lost the opening game to the Colts, and they lost to the Packers, and they lost to the Colts, and they would get just blown out in this game here, 34-13 at home. I said the Lion fans, rightfully so, because they expect, if you're not going to win, my goodness, have a, show up for the game. This was just straight up embarrassing. Then, of course, they would win 3 games throughout the rest of the season. But, they beat the Rams twice, who only won 2 games. And then they beat the Cardinals, who only won 2 games all season. So it was a bad, bad season. The Rams obviously wound up in last place, but the Lions were much better. They wound up in 5th place. And, of course, as you see right here, right up here, 3-8-1. Extremely disappointing season for the Detroit Lions. However, on the other hand, if you look at the San Francisco 49ers, this was an extremely disappointing season, but totally different reason. They're kind of like almost the exact opposite, right? You'll notice right here, they only played 6 preseason games. They kept it to a minimum. But they only won 2. But once again, it's just preseason. Once the regular season started, you'll notice right here, they were 6-1 at one point. They had after 7 games, they had a 2-game lead with only 5 games left to go. And and they wound up, you know, actually they were in first place, 2-game lead over the Baltimore. They were 6-1. The Colts were 4-3. 2-game lead, and they wound up not only second, but they wound up in third place, 2 games out of first place. As you'll see, I said they lost a real tough game. This game here, when they lost to the Packers, actually after the first 2 weeks of the season, we had out of all 12 teams, it was only 2 undefeated teams. That was the Packers and the 49ers. So in week 3, they wound up facing each other. The Packers won by 1 point. So the Packers were 3-0, and the San Francisco 49ers were 2-1. So, I mean, they almost won this game. So they almost were darn near almost 7-0 after 7 games. But then you'll just look right here. They just fell apart. I mean, hey, don't get me wrong. They lost to a Bear team that wound up 8-4. Then they lost to the Colts team. They got blown out in this one. Then they would win a tough game against a tough Browns team, of course. Then they lost another game to the Colts, and they got blown out by the Packers. But I mean, they were actually 6-1 at one point, and then they lost 4 of the last 5 games, and they would wind up tied for third place with the Green Bay Packers. The Western Division was very strong. The Colts would win 9-3. The Bears were 8-4, and the Packers and the 49ers were both finished 7-5. So it was a good, strong division. But it was, I mean, for the 49ers faithful, it was very disappointing when you lose 4 of the final 5 games. They were in 57. They were very good. They were also tied after the regular season with the Detroit Lions to see who would go to the championship game. They had a playoff game, and the 49ers did the same thing in that playoff game in 57 against the Lions as they did this year. The 49ers were up 27-7, like about halfway through the third quarter, and they would lose the game to the Detroit Lions. The Lions would go on to win that playoff game, host the championship game, and wind up beating the Browns. So it was the 49ers maybe didn't always have like the best team, but they had a good competitive team, and they had a couple of chances, maybe to go to a championship game, win a championship game, and things just fell apart. And after this season here, it would be the 60s would be a long, it would be a long decade for them. They wouldn't go back to the playoffs until 1970, 70, 71, and 72. They would lose 3 years in a row to the Dallas Cowboys, and then finally it wouldn't take them until like 1981, where they obviously became the 49ers, the dynasty of the 80s for the 49ers. But so 2 disappointing teams for 2 kind of totally different reasons here. But this game here was played at good old Tiger Stadium. Well, it was, at the time, it was Briggs Stadium. It got changed to Tiger Stadium. It was also known as Navin Field back in the 20s and the 30s. So let's go over good old Tiger Stadium, a good old Wikipedia here. What do they got to say? All right, here we go. The old beautiful Tiger Stadium in 1998. Unfortunately, it was one of those with that Tiger Stadium. It was one of the. It was around for so long. It was such an iconic stadium. It just, unfortunately, some of the stadiums they're able to, keep around, like Wrigley Field, Fenway Park, and Tiger Stadium has a bond with Fenway Park. We're going to talk about that in a second. Some of they're able to keep around. Unfortunately, Tiger Stadium was sadly not one of them. But Tiger Stadium, previously known as Navin Field, Briggs Stadium, was a multi-use stadium located in the Corktown neighborhood of Detroit, Michigan. The stadium was nicknamed The Corner for its location at the intersection of Michigan and Trumbull Avenues. It hosted the Detroit Tigers of Major League Baseball from 1912 to 1999. Wow, 87, maybe 88 seasons. Wow. And, of course, then the Lions were there, too, from 38 to 39, and again from 41 to 74. Tiger Stadium was declared a state Michigan historic site in 1975. The last Tiger game at the stadium was held on September 27, 1999. In a decade after the Tigers vacated the stadium, several rejected redevelopment and preservation efforts finally gave way to the stadium's demolition, which was completed on September 21st, 2009. The former playing field remained until 2018 when the site was redeveloped for the youth sports as the Corner Ballpark. But in 1895, Detroit Tiger owner George Vanderbeck had a new stadium built at the corner of Michigan and Trumbull Avenues. However, the stadium was called Bennett Park and featured a wooden grandstand with a wooden peak roof in the outfield. That's a fire hazard waiting to happen. At the time, some places in the outfield were only marked off with rope. 1911, new Tigers owner Frank Navin ordered a new steel and concrete baseball park to be built on the same site that would seat 23,000 to accommodate the growing number of fans. Navin Field opened on April 20th, 1912, the same day as Fenway Park in Boston. As I was saying, it's like, Fenway's been around ever since. Unfortunately, sadly, Tiger Stadium is not. So, let's see here. We got, over the years, expansion continued to accommodate more spectators. In 1935, following Navin's death, so it was Navin Field from 1912 to 1935. But following Navin's death, new owner Walter Briggs Sr. oversaw the expansion of Navin Field to a capacity of 36,000 by extending the upper deck to the foul poles and across right field. By 1938, the city had agreed to move Cherry Street, allowing the left field seats to be double-decked. And now the renamed Briggs Stadium had a capacity of 53,000. And then in 1961, new owner John Fetzer took control of the stadium and gave it its final and longest-lasting name, Tiger Stadium. Very appropriate. A fire gutted the press box on the evening of February 1st, 1977. But by the early 1990s, you figure the early 1990s had been around for like 80 years. That's a long time for a ballpark to be around. It was clear that Tiger Stadium was at the end of its useful life. Both the city and Tigers ownership wanted a new park, but many campaigned to save the old stadium. Let's see. And of course, sadly, the ground was broken for the new park on October 29, 1997. I haven't been to the new park, but I've seen it on TV. It's beautiful. But to me, I'm an old-time fart. Nothing can replace Tiger Stadium. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Let's see here. And of course, there was, obviously, much expansion happened to it over the years. It's like, there's a postcard showing Briggs Stadium circa 1938 to 1945. Very, very cool. It's almost like, who didn't play in that stadium? It was just, obviously World Series would play there. The All-Star games would play there. The 71 All-Star game was played there. It was, I was like, there's like 20 future Hall of Famers played in that game. It was just something ridiculous. I'm not sure if the whole game is on YouTube or not, but I know you can see at least major parts of the game. Different. There was all kind. I think Roberto Clemente hit a home run in that game. Actually, Reggie Jackson hit one over the roof in right field in that game. My goodness, unbelievable. The memories, the players, both football, boxing, baseball that played in that stadium. Oh, unbelievable. Tiger Stadium was home to the Lions from 38 to 39, again from 41 to 74. The stadium hosted two NFL championship games in 53 and in 57. The Lions would wind up winning both of them. 53 was 17-16, and 57 they won 59-14. Football field ran mostly in the outfield from the right field line to the left center field, parallel to the third baseline. I'll show you some pictures how the game was laid out. The benches for both the lines and their opponents were on the outfield side of the field. In the early 1970s, the city of Pontiac and its community leaders made a presentation to the Metropolitan Stadium Committee for a new stadium. Initially, a dual stadium complex was planned that included a moving roof that was later scrapped due to high costs and the lack of commitment from the Tigers. The Metropolitan Stadium Committee voted unanimously for the Pontiac site. 1973, ground was broken for a stadium to exclusively house the Lions. To me, that was just very sad. But so the Lions played their final home game at Tiger Stadium on Thanksgiving Day, November 28, 1974, against the Denver Broncos. And I remember watching that game because it was Thanksgiving. It was only 2 games on that day. So, that was the early game, and then the Cowboys played later on. But to me, and the old time fart I am, football is supposed to be played outdoors, on grass, in the weather elements. And to take it from those 3 things, the Tiger Stadium, right? I mean, there was days it was cold there, but it's Detroit. It's football. Man up. Put the big boy pants on. I can't. And they took everything inside on artificial turf, no weather elements, in a dome stadium. Ugh, can't stand it. Anyway, Joe Louis was there. Notre Dame football played there, right? I mean, soccer was there. Chaos played there. I mean, Ty Cobb, right? I mean, just Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig of all things. I mean, right here, right? I mean, on May 2nd, 1939, ailing New York Yankees first baseman Lou Gehrig voluntarily benched himself at Briggs Stadium, ending his streak of consecutive games at 2,130, only because of the disease due to the progression of the disease named after him. It was the final game of his career. How sad. But, I mean, if it wasn't for that disease, he might still be playing. I mean, unbelievable. A lot of things I said. Here's the stadium hosted 41, 51, and 71 All-Star games. I said that 71 All-Star game was just unbelievable. AL won 6-4. A lot of home runs were hitting that game. Unbelievable. But all right, so let's get some photos here. Show you the layout of the land at Briggs Stadium. Right here. There we go. All right, now this is a Packers who beat the Lions there. A nice color photo right there. Beautiful, absolutely freaking beautiful. Here we go. There's a little bit of showing a little bit of the layout right here. Right, so you can see the baseball diamond in here. So the one end zone was down like on first base, and it ran this way all the way out to left field. There's some other, this one here. I'll just show you. I mean, look at the padding they got on this baby right here. Huh? This is 11-2-52. Lions and Leon Hart catches one of his 2 touchdowns from good old Bobby Lane. Bobby Lane. I mean, look how high he's skying right there. Now I'm wondering if the ball went over the bar and he jumped up and caught it. He's off the ground pretty high. So look how high he's up there. Sky up there to get that ball. I mean, you can see the padding they put on this. I mean, because all this is like metal pipes right here. This looks like gas pipe. It's like metal piping. Right? And down here, I mean, they wrapped that pretty good. There was a picture I had in here somewhere where they were putting in, here we go, right here. Right now you can just see, right? This is just all pipes right here. The grounds crew right here. So right here, this is where they would, put a bunch of padding around the pole and tape it up. Let's see. Is this high resolution stock photography? So this is field right here. There's another one there. Little Tiger Stadium. But you can also kind of see, like, how also, like, see how far it is from the sideline over here, way over. There's a huge gap over here in between. You get a shot of it here. Look how far away the people are from the sideline here, all the way over here. And can you imagine, like, how they're huddled up in the corner? Say the game was played even closer down here. Way over here. Right, but it's also kind of the same thing on the other side as well, too. There is, there is a big gap in between the sideline and the field. So, the people are, you don't get close to the action until they're in the end zone, right? You could be anywhere here and you're like nowhere near any people. See if I can get another. Oh, here we go. Here's another. Obviously, this is a Lions game. Go Lions. Right, it's the same thing here. So you got the sideline here, and you got the long, big gap there. It's the same thing here. Look, these are the people right here. This might be maybe in the second deck or something. That they're not on the ground, but these people are like almost directly over the people who are on the ground. So, but you can see the sideline here. There's the sideline, and so you basically, right. This is about. The sideline is about halfway in between second base, which would be right here, right, and third base. So you got halfway in between, so that's 90 feet. So this is 45 feet right here, plus another 5 feet maybe to here. So that's 50 feet. Plus, and there's got to be a gap from here to where the people are down over here. So you're, I don't know what you have to be, 60, 75 feet or so away just from the sidelines. So, that obviously, there's a lot of beauty to the stadium and all, but obviously, sometimes the multi-purpose stadiums and all, there always are some deficiencies, and that's the same thing, kind of like right here, right? Oh, nope, wrong park. I got Comiskey Park in there. How did I get in there? That's the wrong stadium. It's Tiger Stadium. So once again, beautiful, beautiful ballpark. Iconic. It's tough to see. I don't know if they're playing the Colts in this game or not, but it's very, very tough. Identified visiting team. Yeah, so it's tough to tell. This certainly could be the Colts, but tough to say. But just a beautiful, beautiful stadium. As I said, it's a shame that, right, Tiger Stadium. Right, it says. Colorized photo of a Lions game at Briggs Stadium. Well, does it say Briggs or Tiger? Well, anyway, just a classic. Unfortunately, I said for me, this is that's what I grew up with. Tiger Stadium. So for them not to not playing it anymore, as I said, when I grew up with the first games, I can almost remember all watching on TV. At Tiger Stadium, I remember was the Bears and the Lions playing, and it was just I remember Dick Butkus was on the field. The guys are just covered in dirt and all mud and all what, just playing. Oh man, that's football. The crap they got now. I don't know. I don't know crap, but just the playing on artificial turf and all that stuff. There's no weather elements. I hate it. Tiger Stadium. Always have a soft spot in my heart for it. So anyway, got a lot of coverage. So what's the word on the street here about this game here, huh? Well, we got a few articles here. The San Francisco Chronicle, October 18th, 1959 edition of the San Francisco Chronicle. What do they got to say? There we go. Nope, wrong one. All right. Lions rated 2-point choice over lucky 49ers. Huh. All right. San Francisco 49ers, who meet the Lions here tomorrow in an NFL game, will be battling to, 1, get back in the title race, and 2, prove the experts wrong. Obviously, the San Franciscans care more about the former than the latter. But step the number 1 cannot be accomplished without number 2, since the odd makers have picked the Lions, who are 0-3, as 2-point favorites over the 49ers, who are 2-1. What they're talking about is, can the 49ers get back? I mean, they just lost. They started off 2-0, and they lost a 1-point game to the Packers. So, I mean, the Detroit weatherman said the weather would be cloudy and cool. The odds establishers are actually saying that the San Francisco's 2 early victories were somewhat fluky, especially the 34-0 win over the Rams. That's fluky. They beat the Rams 1,842-0, but that was total luck. Okay. And the club is really no better than preseason estimates, which placed them 4th, 5th, or 6th in the Western Division. Well, Mama's wrong again, isn't she, huh? The 49ers were a formidable opponent this year, 1959. 49er players and coaching staff take a different view and hope to prove same by downing the Lions to jump back into the title fight with a 3-1 record. At the same time, all San Franciscans feel that Detroit is considerably better than the record shows, and no man will count the victory unless it is won. It seems certain that the Lions are a better passing team than their record of .430 completion percentage and 12 interceptions. The Lions have thrown 12 interceptions in their first 3 games. There's determination not to let the Lions get well against San Francisco, but also some fear that they might do just that. The test of a team's front line strength is usually told in the rushing yardage for and against. And in 2 games with the world champion Colts and 1 with the league-leading Green Bay Packers, the Lions have netted 427 yards on the ground and yielded only 393. But the Lions have been victimized in the air, 617 yards to only 423. Rookie Nick Petrosani was rated the most powerful collegiate runner last year at Notre Dame, and he's performing to notices. He's leading the Detroiters with 131 yards and 24 attempts for a 5.5-yard average. Tobin Rote, one of the league's best running quarterbacks, has gained 91 yards in 16 plays on the split T option, while John Henry Johnson, a little spelling error here, I guess, right? The former 49er has 90 yards in 23 tries. Brad Hickey, 49er coach, came up with a few last-minute changes. Offensively, John Thomas will replace John Gonzaga at left tackle, and Fred Dugan will start for R.C. Owens at right half. In a defensive shift, Clancy Osborne will be at left linebacker in place of Carl Rupke. And, of course, 49ers broadcast. Today's 49ers and Detroit Lion game will be broadcast over stadium KSFO following a pregame warm-up session at 10:10 a.m. And here will be the teams for you. It will be televised on KPIX, Channel 5, if you're in the San Francisco area, at 10:25 a.m., which is just to me, just sounds so weird. The game starts in the morning. That's because I'm on the East Coast. All our games start at least 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And, of course, here's the but you'll notice there's only, there's the squads. There's only 36 players. Right? Imagine having this problem, huh? John Brody, borderline Hall of Famer, and Y.A. Tittle are your quarterbacks. Huh. Then they have Tobin Rote here for the Lions and Earl Morrall, who's, same thing with Brody. They're both young pups, but you'll notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 18. Only 36 players playing. So each man was truly valuable. Unlike today, we got a 53-man roster, but only 46 guys dress. but that's still 10 more than that they had back here. All right, next, the San Francisco Examiner. What do they got to say on the game here? October 18th, 1959 edition. The San Francisco treat. There we go. All right. 49ers battle Lions today. There will be no margin of error for Red Hickey and his 49ers when they hunt out a wounded and angered Detroit Lions team here tomorrow in Briggs Stadium. It will have to be a peak effort, and the 49ers are to beard the lion in his den. The first time in 4 years to capture their first road game of the season and remain a contender in the tight National Football League race in the Western Division. The kickoff for the 20th session in one of Pro Football's closest series is set for 1:30 p.m. Now, they had the 20th session. This would be actually only the 19th, but they had that playoff game in 1957, making this be the 20th session. But if it wasn't for that, they played each other twice ever since 1950. Kickoff is set for 1:30 p.m. or 10:30 a.m. in San Francisco time. And a capacity audience of 54,000 Motor City fans will be on hand hungering for the first Detroit victory after 3 disappointing losses. Oh, they'll be hungering some more after this game, too. I can assure you that. Lions are favored. The weatherman predicted warmer weather for the game with the temperature around 55 degrees. It's expected to be partly cloudy with gentle to moderate winds blowing. Despite San Francisco's 2-1 record, the odds makers actually have the winless Lions figured as 2-point favorites. They're assuming that old Tobin wrote, Hopalong, Cassidy, and company, healthier than they've been before, are ready to reel one in after slowing a pair of decisions to Baltimore and another to Western Conference leading Green Bay. Maybe blowing a pair of decisions. But the statistics won't substantiate it, but Detroit's front four, Darius McCord, Alex Garris, Gil Maines, and Gene Cronin, supported by linebacker Joe Schmidt, are regarded even more capable than Green Bay's rugged front line of defense. One sampling of their capabilities was the second Baltimore game when the Colts were held without a first down from late in the first period until early in the fourth. That's one thing. The Lions always had that tough defense. The fault has been in the secondary, and that's supposed to be corrected now with the return to full-time duty of Yale Larry and Terry Barr, who missed considerable time during the first 3 games. Hickey is hopeful that the installation of Freddie Dugan at the wingback plus some part-time work from Hugh McElhaney will reestablish the 49ers' wide game so effective against Philadelphia and Los Angeles. Only by spreading the lines can the 49ers get the maximum out of their bread and butter operations, namely the passing of Wyatt Till and the running of Joe Perry and J.D. Smith. While the passing of the sometimes great, sometimes sour road has been the Lions' most effective offensive weapon to date, it also has been a contributor to Coach George Wilson's ulcer. Yeah, their passing game has been not very good. Baltimore and Green Bay have intercepted an even dozen Detroit passes. They played Green Bay once, and they played Baltimore twice. So in those 3 games that they're 0-3, they threw 12 interceptions. 49ers defenders will have to be geared for the option threat presented by both Rote and his understudy, Jerry Reichow, the ex-Iowan, whom San Francisco fans will recall as the most valuable player in the 56 East-West Shrine game. The Lions also can call on Earl Maul, one-time 49er first draft choice, who was directed to Detroit in the Bobby Lane deal after a brief stand with Pittsburgh. Maul does punting for the Lions. If the 49ers can kick in with the upset, it will be a big lift for the homecoming next Sunday against the Chicago Bears and possibly a tie for the first place in the division with Green Bay. Depending upon how the Los Angeles Rams do today against the Packers up north. The 49ers are 10-9 with Detroit, and in that game, the Rams would actually they would blow out the Packers in that game, giving the Packers their first loss of the season. So after this game is over, the Packers would be 3-1, and the 49ers would be 3-1. 49ers are 10-9 with Detroit. They're only 21 points difference since the first game in 1950, and 11 of those contests have been decided by margins of less than one touchdown. KPIX Channel 5 will televise the clash, and KSFO will broadcast it. Once again, here's all those lineups. It's on channels 5, 3, 8, 10, 12, and 12C. Wow. They're all over the place. Oh, and no, the Lions, I'm sorry, the 49ers are not for sale. Club president Victor Morbido tonight vigorously denied that the 49ers are for sale in response to an exclusive San Francisco Examiner story that multimillionaire sportsman C.W. Smith of Detroit was interested in purchasing the team. Morbido tonight called a conference of Bay Area football writers upon his return from the East. I have never met Mr. Smith. I do not know Mr. Smith. I do not want to meet Mr. Smith, and I haven't met Hillsdale Smith, the 49er chief said of the Detroit industrialist and his fabulous racehorse, Hillsdale. 49ers are not for sale. We have been approached many times in the past few years, the last time about 8 months ago. Morbido, who is second to Mrs. Josephine Morbido, widow of the late Tony on the list of stockholders, was asked if he might consider selling for a fabulous sum, such as $3 million mentioned by Smith in his interview with the Examiner. He was somewhat indignant when he replied, "I just gave you a statement. We are not in business for capital gain." Aha. All right, so the 49ers are not for sale, just in case you were wondering, even for $3 million. All right, so now next, what do we got? We're going to go to the Detroit Free Press. What do they got to say on the game here? Detroit Free Press here. October 18th, 1959 edition. Lions look to 49ers for first victory. If you believe in fairy tales, then believe in the Lions. They're convinced that they still are in the race for the National Football League's Western Division Championship, that they will break away from the starting gate 3 weeks late this Sunday. This is the Lions' passing defense. It looks like a piece of Swiss cheese to me, says Whitey Tittle. They face the 49ers, surprisingly among the league's pace setters, at 1:30 p.m. at Briggs Stadium. Another sellout crowd of 54,000 is expected. Several hundred reserve seats remain. Some 7,000 bleacher seats will go on sale at 11:30 a.m. Each week, the troubled Lions face a crisis. This date with the 49ers is no less critical than those of recent weeks. For the Lions, still are seeking the victory they hope will trigger a title march. It's not impossible, Coach George Wilson keeps saying. The way the race is developing, we can still take it all. Wilson, of course, is counting on a belated surge by the Lions. He knows they played well enough to have won the 3 games they lost, but brief lapses have left them the only team in the NFL without a victory. Our defense, says Wilson, generally has held up well. We've had some problems with the offense. There is not much more that can be done at quarterback, where Wilson and his staff have taken over the play calling. The hope is that Tobin Rote, who hit only 9 of 25 passes and had 3 intercepted last week against the Colts, will be more accurate. Lions pass receivers have flopped, and now it's a matter of waiting for them and Rote to get together. 2 significant changes have been made. Danny Lewis, the speedy halfback who has been used sparingly, is expected to get more of a chance. He would replace John Henry Johnson, who is not good enough often enough. And there you say, right? The Lions are the only team. I said, and the Packers are the only team that's undefeated. but they would lose today to the Rams. Oh, wait, what did I say? Bill Glass moves to offensive center, replacing injured Charlie Ann. It seems strange, but the Lions are rated 2-point favorites over the 49ers, despite San Francisco's superior record. The 49ers have whipped the Eagles and the Rams, and last week dropped a 21-20 decision to the Green Bay Packers. Mostly, the 49ers present an old familiar troop. It's headed by bald Y.A. Tittle, whose passing and running has scared the Lions for years. Included, too, are Joe Jet Perry and Hugh McElhaney, two great backs from the Lions. Two great backs the Lions have come to respect. McElhaney will be somewhat handicapped. He has a fractured left hand, which will be encased in a special cast. And if you're an armchair quarterback, turn into Pro Football, the Detroit Lions versus the San Francisco 49ers. 1:30 p.m. today. There you go. Or, right on WJR 760 on your radio dial. There you go. All right, so what happened during the game? Well, let's go here. What do we got? The Detroit Free Press, the October 19th, 1959 edition of the Detroit Free Press. Dun, 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 dun. All right, here we go. October 19th, 1959, the Detroit Free Press. The Lions let us down. Again, 34-13. 52,585 boo. A total collapse. Pro Dynasty is washed up. Wow. But the Detroit Pistons defeated the Minneapolis Lakers 106-105 before only 2,000 people. Unbelievable. Okay, whoops. Not bad. You see, it was 20-0 at half. It was 27-7 going into the final period. San Francisco ran up 300 yards rushing, only 100 yards passing. I mean, that's a quarterback's dream. I mean, unless you're like Dan Marino, who likes to throw the ball, or some quarterbacks, want to throw the ball. Whatever it is, but this is like a quarterback's dream. If you could win a game 34-13 and you just have to pretty much worry about just turning around and handing the ball off all the time. Wow. What we got passes? They only had to throw 18 passes he had to throw. Yeah. But the Lions lost 3 fumbles. And passes intercepted and lost. So once again, it looks like they lost another 4. Had four turnovers, the Lions. Nice picture right here. It was a frustrating afternoon for the Lions. Look at all those white jerseys. Look at all those 49ers. All right, here we go. A great gridiron dynasty which began to rise a decade ago lay in utter ruin Sunday. Its creators apparently no longer able, its followers no longer loyal. With raucous boos from the disenchanted echoing through Briggs Stadium, the Detroit Lions shamed themselves as seldom before as they bowed to the 49ers 34-13. When it was done, head coach George Wilson walked forlornly and alone across the empty playing field, head bowed, trying to ignore the cries from the deriders. And there's a picture I think I got where he's like walking off the field and something, and it's like the crowd's like pointing at him and yelling at him and stuff like that. They are not happy. San Francisco thoroughly whipped the Lions, cracked them apart where the Lions were strongest, ran over them, passed over them, thwarted the Lions so completely that Wilson, in despair, let his quarterbacks call the plays. A burst by the 49ers, which produced 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals, early sealed the Lions' 4th straight defeat. This clearly is the end for the Lions. No, not the end in 1959, because that fact already was established. This is the end of the dynasty, which produced 3 world championships in a 6-year span. A major rebuilding or new inspiration or something drastic is required to reconstruct what fell apart before 52,585 fans accustomed to seeing something better. Since they last won the World Championship in the miracle-filled 1957 season, the Lions have played 16 league games. They've won a meager 4 times. In compiling this dismal record, there almost always was some excuse: injuries, bad luck, weak quarterbacking, 101 excuses, some of them valid. There is no excuse now. The Lions, sorely disappointed by early failures, are now a team without zest or incentive, lacking efficiency, and with that, they are easy prey. They were easy prey for the 49ers. Detroit's defensive line, always the solid foundation on which the dynasty was built, was taken apart by the 49ers. San Francisco ran through and around the Lions' wall for an awesome 296 yards. 49ers passed for another 108 for a 404-yard total, far more than the world champion Baltimore Colts had achieved. Quarterback Tobin Rote, blamed for the Lions' failures the last 2 weeks, was fortunate to survive this game. He never had a chance as the Lions' offensive line yielded and let the 49ers throw him for a loss after loss, a total of 64 backpedaling yards. Wow. Only twice in the game did the Lions show anything. The first instance came at the start of the second half. The drop pass here is the Belly series divided by 49 fullback Joe Perry on the ground, the line defender Gary Lowe. The ball wound up on Perry's stomach after both missed a wide Tittle pass. It made a little difference to San Francisco, however. Tittle connected on enough others to make it a sad Sunday for the Lions. When Rote arched a magnificent 41-yard pass to Hopalong Cassidy for the Lions' first touchdown, it reduced San Francisco lead to 20-7, and there were brief hopes of a Lion revival. At this stage, Wilson entrusted the play calling to his quarterback again. On Detroit's next effort, Rote carried the Lions to the San Francisco 25, but the Lion blocking evaporated. On fourth down, the big Texan was smashed so hard by Leo Namalini and Ed Tenke, 49 linemen, that the ball fell from his grasp. Whatever hopes the Lions had of recovering disappeared shortly thereafter when Gene Cronin and Alex Garrett recovered a fumble on the Detroit 27. Fullback John Henry Johnson barged to his 39. Then on a third straight smash at the line, he fumbled. Matt Hazeltine, 49ers linebacker, picked up the ball and raced 40 yards to another San Francisco touchdown. That made the score 27-7 and put the game beyond the Lions' reach. Although they managed to score again early in the fourth period, this time Earl Morrall pitched a big pass. Subbing for Rote, Morrall fired a shot directly over the middle of the line to second-string fullback Ken Webb. Webb raced 67 yards to the San Francisco 6, and on the second play, Nick Petrosani barged into the end zone from the 4. It was the final serious effort by the Lions. San Francisco retaliated, widening its bulge to 34-13 on a 1-yard smash by J.D. Smith in the final 2 minutes. The game was decided late in the first period and early in the second, when the 49ers unveiled running, which proved the Lions' defensive line could be knocked aside and pierced. Behind fine blocking, Joe Perry accumulated 145 yards and Smith 152 yards. Wow, rushing in the game. Most of it came in the first half. Yeah, so that's the 297 yards right there. That's wow. Midway in the opening period, the hard-running Smith tore around left end and raced 40 yards to the Detroit 30. Perry followed with a 12-yard sprint. Then Smith covered the final 18 yards around left end. Rote threw another interception, which caused Wilson to pull him from the game, and Petrosani fumbled on the Lions' next 2 opportunities. Wow. First play of the second period, Wyatt Tittle fired a pass to end Clyde Connor, who whizzed past Terry Barr for 37 yards in a 14-0 lead. The next time they had the ball, the 49ers again whisked Perry away on a 40-yard sprint around left end. They followed it up with another 13-yard dash by Perry to set up Tommy Davis for first of his 2 field goals, 13-yarder, which made the score 17-0. With Road back in the lineup again, being bounced about by the charging 49er line, the Lions could do nothing. Why Tittle connected with Bill Wilson for a 25-yard gain to Detroit 17. Davis followed with a 21-yard field goal for a 20-0 lead at the half. Here the Lions paced to the locker room, trailed by Wilson, with the catcalls of a once adoring fans making it more difficult to recall the wondrous days of 1957 when a Detroit dynasty ruled the football world. All right, so we got, go back here. All right. Quarterback Wilson benches himself. Don't know what we'll do. The scheme of sideline quarterbacking may have come and gone as far as George Wilson is concerned. 2 games ago, dissatisfied with the calls of his playing quarterback, Wilson adopted the system of calling plays from coaching headquarters by using guards as message bearers. Actually, most plays were called by assistants in the press box since they could view the field better than Wilson. This arrangement was among other items that went into the scrap heap during the 34-13 defeat Sunday by San Francisco. It was junked at halftime. Wilson called every play in the first half, but sent his messenger in just once in the second half. I don't know right now. I just don't know what we're going to do about anything, Wilson replied softly and sadly to questioners afterwards. There was a 22-minute delay instead of the usual 10-minute cooling off period before reporters were admitted to the Lions' room. The gloom was still hanging in heavy sheets, however. No one was gloomier than Wilson. I tried all the quarterbacks today, hoping one or another would be the man to give us the needed lift. Wilson detailed painfully. That didn't work. Nothing worked. No, I can't say what I'll do about the quarterbacks next. I don't feel that Rowe got the kind of protection he needed on many of the plays, but he also was off on some plays when he did have the time. Maybe this week we can find the key to get us going again. We've got to come up with something. At this point, Edwin J. Anderson, president of the Lions, stuck his head in the coaching office and asked, "Why don't you guys leave Wilson alone so he can relax?" No one paid any attention to the interruption, and Wilson continued, "You writers should give a whale of a lot of credit to Leo Navalini. He's a guy who was hurt and didn't practice all day. What a game he played. Leo kept killing us out there. We had to quit going his way. But when we went the other way, he was still killing us." Wilson's answer to the next question, an obvious one, went like this. The right guard is charged with the responsibility for stopping Leo. Yeah, good luck there. I'm not putting my finger on any one boy, though, because our whole offensive line played its worst in a long time. Until further bulletins arrived, the Lions escaped fairly well physically. Gilmains twisted a knee, but it's not believed serious. Ken Webb was elbowed on the chin on a gang tackle and knocked cold. Whew. He still was groggy an hour later, but had nothing worse than a headache. It wouldn't fly nowadays, I can tell you that much. Many of the 52,585 fans thought that Captain Joe Schmidt was taken out with an injury in the third period. Not so. He got the thumb from officials. The guy kicked me in the head. I turned and pushed him, and that was the end for me, Schmidt said tersely of the incident. So he got kicked, he turned around and pushed somebody, and he got thrown out of the game. Despite the lopsided score, it was no day for softies. 3 personal fouls were whistled, and other bitter byplay went uncalled. Detroit now has played Baltimore and San Francisco, the 2 teams tied for the Western Division lead on successive Sundays. How does Wilson compare the 2 clubs? That's not a fair question. No one can tell until they've met each other once. Personally, I think this was San Francisco's best game so far. They had a terrific hustle. If they can play like that every week, they're probably even with the Colts at least. Red Hickey, the delighted San Francisco coach, was bubbling over with happiness. Give the credit for this game to Henry Schmidt. Hickey urged writers who never heard of a Henry Schmidt. He's our trainer. He's the guy who got Namalini ready for this game. Asked to peg the difference in the two teams, Hickey turned to a familiar old football axiom. The team that blocks and tackles the best usually wins. That's true. And we were doing that today. Yep. Someone asked him what he thought of the 49ers' chances for a title. Title? Don't use the word. Don't even think about it. We play the Bears next. That's more important to think about. Asked how San Francisco came to run so much against the Lions. Hickey replied, how much was it? Told that the team had outgained Detroit on the ground 296 to 117. Hickey said, we really figured we'd have to pass a lot. You know, Detroit always has been a tough team for us. But we started getting those runs by Joe Perry and J.D. Smith. It was going so good, we just stayed with it out of curiosity. And there we go. Here's some stats right here for you. And we got 8, 9, 10, 11. Only caught 12 passes for Detroit. I mean, all three quarterbacks were in there. Wright, Cal, Morrill, and Rote. Till went the whole way, 7 of 18 for only 100. They only had to throw 18 passes, but they only had, what, 7 completions here. Well, you'll see right here, right? I mean, two guys ran. Perry ran 15 times, 145 yards. Smith 23 times, 152. Wow. Hey. All right, let's go here. What do we got? We got the San Francisco Examiner. The October 19th, 1959 of the San Francisco Examiner. What do they got to say? Dun, 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 dun. Here we go. Oh, that's the wrong one. Here we go. This should be the right one. Ball gets away from Joe Perry on the ground. A pass play from Wyatt Tittle. Now, I don't know if it's the same picture as one before or what. But here are the stats once again. The teams. All right, 49 is a big factor. Coach Red Hickey thinks the 1959 race in the Western Division of the National Football League will be the greatest in the history, and he expects his San Francisco 49ers to be a factor all the way. This is a year when any team can beat another, Hickey said after the 49ers coasted to a 34-13 victory over the Lions to climb back into a tie for the division leadership. Hickey pointed to the Los Angeles-Green Bay game as an example. Oh, yeah, I mean, Green Bay's 3-0. Right, the Rams would win their second and final game of the season, but they would win 45-6 over the Packers. The Rams hadn't looked too good, and the Packers had won their first 3 games, he said. Then the last I heard, Los Angeles was winning 45-6 in the fourth period. San Francisco coach said, our running game against the Lions here was the best it has been this season, but we've been primarily a running team all season. And he had a glint in his eye when he said it. Obviously, because Hugh McElhenny, one of the team's top running backs, will return to the lineup for next Sunday's battle with the Chicago Bears. McElhenny missed 2 games because of a broken hand. Hickey had praise for halfback J.D. Smith, who ripped through the Detroit line almost at will and was rewarded with 2 touchdowns. We used him as a defensive back when he came to the club several years ago, but decided to switch him to offense last season, Hickey said. That don't happen much nowadays. You don't draft the guy as a cornerback, and a couple of years later, the guy's still on the team, and let's put him in as a running back. That doesn't much happen nowadays. Smith didn't see too much action as a running back last season, he said, but he's played every minute we've had the ball this year. The 49ers rolled 296 rushing yards to 108 in the air. Smith alone accounted for more than 120 yards rushing, including a 41-yard sprint on the first 49er touchdown drive. Hickey said the 49ers were not quite as stout defensively against the Lions as they were in their two previous regular season victories. The Lions got 117 yards running and 185 yards passing, he said. Neither the Rams nor the Eagles made 100 yards against us on the ground or in the air. Wow. Hickey said the 49ers came through without a serious injury, just a general run of bumps and bruises, he said. All right, let's go to where we got here. The San Francisco Chronicle, the October 19th, 1959 edition of the San Francisco Chronicle. All right, here we go. There's the same picture, too, right there. Switch in Detroit. Fans roar at the Lions. The city of Detroit turns its back on its own professional football team tonight. The bitterness of the Detroit fans booing at Detroit football team was accented further when a morning newspaper began its story of the game as follows. A great gridiron dynasty lay in utter ruin Sunday. Its creators apparently no longer able, its followers no longer loyal. The Detroit Lions shamed themselves as seldom before as they bowed to the San Francisco 49ers 34-13. This clearly is the end for the Lions. A major rebuilding or new inspiration or something drastic is required. The Lions are now a team without zest or incentive. There was no howling for Coach George Wilson's scalp as such, but it appeared that the wolf howls are well underway. Quick quotes from the 49ers. Coach Red Hickey, Jerry Tubbs was good again today. That man's coming of age. He'll always said middle linebacker is my spot, but nobody would believe him. The Cards drafted him number 1, but cut him after a year and a half of trying him at the corner. So we used him at the corner last year, and he looked just so-so. After the exhibition season this year, we moved him into the middle. I guess he knew what he was talking about. It is believed that Tubbs was under serious consideration to be cut before being shifted. Now is perhaps the fastest linebacker in the league. He gives the 49ers a new dimension in the middle. He pursues like a defensive halfback. Defensive line coach Mark Duncan was asked while under the shower. He's in the shower. Hey, coach, how you doing? I hope you don't mind us talking to you while trying to take a shower. Huh? Who was supposed to cover Ken Webb when he caught the pass to set up the TD? One of the 49ers covered with soap shouted, "Don't say the name, coach. Just say it was the defense." Well, said Duncan, I guess it was my fault as much as anyone's. I didn't notice the Lions had sent Webb in. If I had, I would have changed the coverage because of his speed. Matt Hasseltine, my rugby training paid off on a touchdown. I used to pick them on the fly at California, and that's what I did today. Ted Connolly, I blocked this guy on JD's run, and I was falling. I guess my knee hit Schmidt in the face. Anyway, that's what he was yelling about when he punched me. And coach Bob Shaw to Clancy Osborne, terrific game. Osborne, who missed last week's game with an injured knee, I told you my leg would hold up. Charlie Kruger on being asked to hit J.H. Johnson to cause the fumble which set up Hasseltine's run. The red dog was on. I guess the whole middle was in there on John Henry. Yes, I had my hand in there too. And there's this story here, but I got another couple pages here I want to go over. Let's see, share the screen. So this would be, there we are. And share. Okay. Which one is, there we go. The Detroit News. There we go. The Monday, October 19th, 1959 of the Detroit News. Now right here we got that they're not happy. Ears burn and Monday morning quarterback in the stands get in his licks a little early as Lions coach George Wilson heads for the dugout after yesterday's defeat. The spectators booed Wilson and the Lions throughout the game. Yep, he's not happy. What to do? Lions dispirited, then disgraced. In the first 3 Sundays, the Detroit Lions were disorganized in a dreary start in the National Football League. Yesterday, the Lions were dispirited in the first half and ultimately were disgraced in a 34-13 defeat by the San Francisco 49ers. For the record, the Lions haven't won a game since they beat the Green Bay Packers last Thanksgiving. The current 6-game losing streak that began last December is within range of the worst sequence of reversals in the dozen years of the present ownership. Bo McMillan lost 7 in a row from 48 to 49. No championship team has ever disintegrated so fast as the Lions since the 57 glory days. Detroit has played 16 games and won only 4. What's wrong with the Lions, and what does Coach George Wilson plan to do about the 0-4 one-loss record that pushes Detroit atop the sad sack teams of 1959? Plainly, Tolman Road is having a bad year at quarterback. Earl Morrall and Jerry Reichow don't seem to be ready to pick up the club. The Detroit pass receivers have been confused, except for now and then when Hopalong Cassidy makes the big play. Yesterday, there was a breakdown of Detroit's line blocking. Road and his stand-ins were smeared for 64 yards attempting the pass. In fact, 33-year-old Leo Namalini harassed the Detroit passers to the degree that the Lions quit sending plays from the bench in the second half. Big Leo messed up everything good. In the first 3 games, the Lions were riddled by Baltimore and Green Bay for quick touchdown passes. Yesterday, Detroit was overwhelmed by 2 49er runners, Joe Perry and J.D. Smith. Perry averaged 9.7 yards a play, and Smith averaged 6.6 yards every time his signal was called. The Lions' defense has collapsed. Wilson, bewildered after the cave-in of team ambitions, isn't sure that he'll do to shake up the Lions. We've got to sit down and try to figure out something, he said without a shred of belligerence. At halftime, the Lions trailed 20-0. I tried to fire them up. I've never been rougher with a team. Just when it looked like we were getting back in the game, that fumble finished us off. On the road for 3 weeks, John Henry Johnson, hoping to win back the confidence of the coaching staff, fumbled at his own 40. Linebacker Matt Hazeltine picked up the ball for an easy touchdown run. The 49ers, fattening their margin to 27-7, won as they pleased. I'll come back to this right here. It is scant consolation to the Lions that they will be away from Briggs Stadium for the next 3 Sundays. In order, their games are Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Pittsburgh, but the Lions won't look any better on television unless they rally. There's always the frightening possibility of an 0-12 season. In 1942, the Lions had only 11 games. They faithfully followed a bleak pattern for an 0-11 performance, which is unmatched in Detroit football futility. Whew. Detroit's next worst start came in 1955 with an 0-6 getaway, which is, you figure, is rather, because you figure, they went to the championship in 52, 53, 54, and in 55 they start the season 0-6. Wow. The Lions eventually made it 3-9 and finished last. President Edwin J. Anderson stands firmly behind Wilter. Wait. Wilson. He keeps saying the coach will be back in 1960, whether or not he wins a game all year. Yesterday, Anderson veered from talking about the ball bouncing against us. We had a bad first half, Anderson admitted. It was the worst half we've ever played, but we came back pretty good in the second half. It's more difficult to explain away that the Lions have given up more than twice as many points, 114, as they've scored in 4 games, 56. The payoff is on the scoreboard. Under new coach Red Hickey, the 49ers seemed well organized. Hickey got uniformly good quarterbacking from Y.E. Tittle and superb running from Perry and Smith. Tittle's only touchdown pass was a 37-yard shot to Clyde Connor over the frantic Terry Barr on the first play of the second quarter. Smith had run 18 yards for the first touchdown. Tommy Davis converted 2 extra points and booted field goals of 13 and 21 yards. Thus, the 49ers dominated the first half. Road emerged from under Lamellini long enough to arch a touchdown pass to Cassidy on a 59-yard play in the third period. But Hazeltine turned Johnson's fumble into 6 points to offset it. Nick Petrosani scored his second pro touchdown, a 4-yard affair in the final quarter. Ken Webb set this one up on a 67-yard pass play with Earl Morrall. But Perry ripped the Lions again, setting up a 1-yard touchdown for Smith. That did it in the Detroit's worst licking in exactly a year. On the 4th Sunday of 1958, the Colts clobbered Detroit 40-14. Wow. Freckle Jack Kemp, who almost landed a job as number 3 Detroit quarterback behind Bobby Lane and Tobin Rote in 1957, now is the number 3 quarterback behind the scenes for the 49ers. Kemp was hidden out on the same basis last year by the Giants. What happened to the Lions? Kemp inquired in the 49er dressing room. I remember when they were great. Kemp had a plane to catch, and there was scant time to discuss such a big subject. Director Ernest Kanzler poked his head into George Wilson's office and said whimsically, "They tell me an 8-4 one-loss record will take the championship. You've done that easy part. Now you have the hard part of winning 8 games." Just before J.D. Smith's first touchdown for the 49ers, the officials stopped play for 2 minutes in a sort of cooling-off period at the Detroit 18-yard line. Referee George Renix was following league orders. Cooling off. Interesting. The sponsors had time for a commercial in nearly 10 minutes. The rest didn't help the Lions. Smith ran for a touchdown on the next play. Wow. So they hadn't had a commercial timeout, or they couldn't show commercials for 10 minutes. So they had to take 2 minutes off so they could show some. Wow. There we go. Rushing 49ers find a bonanza in Detroit. Up and over goes J.D. Smith for the 49ers final touchdown right here. The 34-13 route. Right here. And up, I guess, and over. You're out. Lions. Schmidt gets the thumb from referee George Renix as a glum coach George Wilson looks on. The ejection, Schmidt's first, will cost the defensive star an automatic $100 fine. Yeah. About to get clobbered. This is the way it went for line quarterback Tobin Rote, here in the process of being thrown for a 7-yard loss by 49ers Matt Hazeltine and Charlie Kruger, number 70. There's Kruger, and there's Hazeltine. And there's Tobin Rote, about to get waffled. And what do we got here? One against many. The Lions' Joe Schmidt rises up to hold back the Tide and stop 49er J.D. Smith on the 1-yard line. San Francisco drew a 5-yard penalty on this play for backfield in motion. The visitors then kicked a field goal to go ahead 17-0 in the second quarter. When you look, it's like nothing like 49 here, 49 there, 49 there, 49. It's like 49 is all over the place, and you got one. Looks like one Detroit Lion. Two guards too busy to carry in plays. Questions that call for an answer after the Detroit Lions slithered to an 0-4 one-loss record in yesterday's 34-13 defeat to the 49ers at Briggs Stadium. Why did George Wilson quit sending plays from the bench in the second half? Has he given the game back to the quarterback? Wilson said, "We told the quarterback at halftime the type of plays we wanted them to use in the second half. We had to give the two new kids, guards Mike Raybold and Bob Gratkow, who served as Wilson's messengers, some rest so they could try to stop Leo Nomalini." Leo was killing us. He gave those two kids lots of trouble. I'm not sure what we'll do next Sunday in calling plays on the bench. First time they had the ball in the game, the Lions declined to try for less than a yard on fourth down at the San Francisco 39. Wilson used to say he'd gamble on anything. Is he losing his nerve? Wilson said, "If you miss the first down, the 49ers haven't gotten far to go. I thought Jim Martin could get us 3 points. He missed from the 46. Earl Morrall completed 4 of 6 passes for 117 yards. He didn't get into the game at quarterback until the last 11 minutes. Why not before? We kept trying Rote and Jerry Reichow. We needed a lift from somebody. Finally, we tried Morrall, and he got things going. It was a little late. Joe Schmidt, never before ejected from a game, got bounced by the officials in the third quarter. What happened? Referee George Renix, Schmidt took a pretty good poke at him. Guard Terry Connolly of the 49ers. Schmidt, somebody tripped me up, and this guy, Connolly, came down with his knee on my head. I got a little mad. The swing will cost me $100. Automatic league fine for suspension. But I didn't get $100 worth. Wayne Walker barely made the first extra point conversion and missed the second. Will there be a change here? Wilson said, "There sure will be a change. I hope Joe Perry, who has been hurt, can come back. Otherwise, it will be Martin." The 49ers were penalized 5 yards from the Detroit 1 when it looked as if Gene Cronin of the Lions was offside. What's the story? Head linesman Charlie Berry. The 49er halfback, J.D. Smith, jumped the signal and drew line Cronin offside. We always penalize the first guy who moves. It cost the 49ers possibly another touchdown as they had to settle for a field goal. The Lions keep on losing. Will they get the number 1 draft choice? Yes, but that's the hard way to rebuild. The league draft meeting is November 30th in Philadelphia. At that time, each club will receive 20 draft choices instead of 30, as in other years. All the drafting will be done on that day. Wow. My goodness. Draft 20 picks in one day. Wow. Lions have 6 more games before the meeting. If they lose them all, Detroit is the number 1 pick, clinched. The next question is whether Detroit will go for a sharp college quarterback like Don Meredith of Southern Methodist. Just before the half, the Lions used 2 double-wing plays with Rote receiving a direct pass from center. Why wasn't this used in the second half? Wilson said, "We wanted to give Rote more time back there. It didn't seem to help, so we forgot about it in the second half." And we go back here. They just couldn't handle the 49ers end run. We've got to admit it, the 49ers worked us over real good yesterday with an end sweep that we must have gained 100 yards as they licked us 34-13. We have the same play for the 49ers as a fake handoff to the fullback, usually Joe Perry. Instead, the ball is handed to halfback J.D. Smith. The guard, Bruce Bosley, pulls out the block, and the end, Clyde Connor, blocks his man. The play didn't work for us. With perfect execution, the 49ers turned into big yardage. Perry and Smith are good backs. There is one consolation that this play went big against the Rams 2 weeks ago when the 49ers beat them 34-0. Whitetail is a smooth operator quarterback. He and Perry always seem to go good against us. Now they have this fellow Smith. This play made us look bad all afternoon. We couldn't begin to handle it. 49ers sweep. executed perfectly. So we got, right, you got Tittle. You got Perry up to, comes, maybe fakes it up the, one of the best things you try to do, right? Turn around, maybe fake it to Perry, maybe hold the linebackers or so. But he comes in and fills this void here. He's got the pulling guard, right? So he's leading the way. So these guys, man on man, right? And you got, what do you got? Wow, the tackle is downfield blocking. One of the ends is downfield blocking. This guy's downfield blocking. Connor comes over here and handles the cornerback. So you got the guy Bosley out leading. As long as Connor's got this guy covered, right? And you got a man on man here. You got him out of here lead blocking, and you got Smith behind him. Yeah, so that could be tough. It could be tough if these guys aren't able to get off their blocks or they can't flow or whatever. It's gonna be tough. That'd be tough. So apparently the Lions had a hard time handling that play. And as you can see, it wound up, a lot of yards, almost 300 yards rushing by the 49ers. So, but it was a very, very disappointing, for the Detroit Lions. It was just a miserable season. Things didn't go well. They would win 3 more games. Next week, they would finally, coming up, they would finally win their first game, but it was not against a very good team. So they would wind up, very, very disappointing 3-win season, as I said, for the 49ers. They would got out to a 6-1 start, and they would wind up collapsing, losing 4 of their final 5 to finish. Not only they were in first place at 6-1, and at the season's end, when all the dust settled, they would find themselves tied for 3rd place with the Green Bay Packers, 7-5. Disappointing as well, too. Well, that's the way it was on this date, October 18th, 1959, as the San Francisco 49ers faced the Detroit Lions at Briggs Stadium in pro football's first 50 years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.